Hello and welcome. It's the Creative Shock team. Of course, I'm Mr. Ree, and with me is Lime Light. Wow, I've done too many intros that I'm struggling with my words just before Nats, but I'm excited to make some content for us. And today, we're looking at a tier list for this season. Looking at the meta, talking about what we should be seeing, what we think we'll be seeing, what Limelight will be seeing as he watches at home over the weekend. Some big news coming up with Line. He's due to be a data, so he won't be there for Nats. Of course, I will be there, which is exciting. But yeah, Lime's going to be sitting at home, the big 70-inch TV, watching you guys play. So Lime, what's going on in your world, man? You happy to be here? What's going on?
I'll be watching you guys on stream, and I hope that everyone pops off on stream.
Yep.
I'm very excited. I think that it is a very interesting Nationals to watch, just because we had the Proxies Vault card, Clarent come out, Clarent reimagined, which actually is a heavy change in the meta, as it has been causing some trouble for the top deck Fractals. I obviously couldn't go to Nationals. I am having my son next week, which is exciting.
Woohoo!
But I will be definitely sitting on this couch and watching everyone in action. What are we thinking tier list wise, Mr.
I think let's start with we'll just start with a nice common one. I guess we'll work from there. I think let's start with Wind Allies. Okay, you've got S tier, A tier, B tier, C tier, and D tier. Now, Wind Allies, I feel like for me, I'll start. You can argue. You're the knowledge man. Remember, I am just a caster. I haven't made the champion like yourself. You know, I have to be careful where I look, not to look you straight in the eye. But I would probably say this sits maybe. I think it's like a solid pick, maybe B tier. Like, I think Wind Allies is like, it's just like a consistent deck. That's what it is. It's a consistent deck that just like can win, can't win. It doesn't have like that. It doesn't need that rush play of a rushed egg or play long. It just does what it needs to do with those niche cards like Stifling Trap and Dream Fairy that can really turn a game and gives you that vary. So I kind of put it in the middle. I think the middle deck.
So I guess the situation with Wind Allies currently is that they've all brought that Clarent into their deck now as well. So they are running Clarent in their deck too, to deal with Burst Asunder decks, and also to deal with, I guess, people trying to fight the board. There is a lot of sweeps going on. There's a lot of Hurricane and Flame sweeps in the meta right now, so they are struggling with that. But I would say it's probably like it's a bit of a stable build where a Wind Allies deck would probably still be seen in day two, because it can't whiff, it can't like miss cards that it needs. You know, it's pretty straight to the floor. You play your allies. I did see that Asnat won the European Online Regionals with Wind Robots. Asnat is actually a Sydney player that won European Regionals. So I would say I would probably put it in A tier, maybe B tier. I'd say like in like the bottom of A tier is where I'd probably put it currently, just because you'll definitely still see a Wind Allies player not only in day two, but maybe in like a top 16.
Okay, big calls. Top 16. Now, what we'll do here is we're definitely going to put them all in, and we're probably going to shuffle. So I'm happy to shift it up into the A.
Yeah.
If you'd like.
Yeah. Okay.
I just think that like there's so many cards in this deck. Like I feel like Gildas is just like one that just is so strong for allied decks. It just 100%. So impactful from the game that just I don't remember when it was released, but that card has been around forever, right? And it's just such a
since the start.
it's just a wonderful card, and I think it just becomes so powerful at 4/3. You know, and I feel like
really interesting as well that like even the Burst Asunder deck, which is a combo deck, is also running Gildas, because Gildas is obviously such a strong unit to deal with. And Fractals are able to balance whenever they want because they have so many Fractals on the board. So Gildas has kind of become more relevant than it ever has been. At the
wild.
Well, it's become more relevant just because I guess it's not just allies currently running Gildas. There's a lot of different decks putting Gildas in right now.
All right, let's shift over. Okay, we'll stay with the Wind style then, and maybe we'll look at Wind Arisana. I don't think a lot of people play Wind Arisana, really, in my observation. Like some people now and then, if I'm talking to a lot of people, I see the other kind of decks. That's for me in like locals. It may be somewhere different in regionals where I'm playing, but the ones I've played, I knew a few people are playing it. I think the Cosmo Bowl, I think the negates are really strong. Oh, I really don't know with this deck. I haven't seen it pop off. For me, I haven't seen really, like, I don't think I put it in S tier. A tier, if I'm looking at the other decks, I think it even drops. Like, I'm saying it's, if I'm putting a B tier for me, it's because I just think it can't beat. I think it's struggling a lot with these aggro decks, or it becomes the control of the water decks. It does have some advantages, like the wind. You've got Polaris is super strong. Like, that's one of the, the benefits of Arisana that I think it's making it more playable. So maybe I'll push up to 8 because Polaris is a great way to deal with allies at the moment. And we saw that coming up in the reviews. It's been pushed onto the, the banning situation. Like, I'm pretty sure it was like one to watch is now on there. Maybe A tier. I think A tier.
I think the current situation is that Fire Lorraine, aggro Lorraine, has kind of hit the ground running since Clarent came out for the last 2 weeks. And Fire aggro Lorraine, like Arisana was already weak to Pfizer and to aggro because she wasn't really able to get her Polaris out fast enough, and you would need to use like fast cures and stuff. But then they don't save you. Then she doesn't have a way to stop like a 16 damage rending flames. Like, she's got nascent barrier, but she can't astral spell shield, and she can't nascent barrier all the time. So I feel as though like it's still like a good player, and there will be good players still on Arisana, and Arisana will still have a performance, but it's not as meta as, like, there's not going to be 50 Arisanas. Like, there's probably going to be maybe 15 to 20 in the whole tournament, and maybe a few of them will be like maybe 3 or 4 might make it day 2 or top 32. So I think that I would probably actually, current meta right now, especially with Clarent, I would put it in B tier as well, just because like you're thinking about all these Clarent decks, plus the fire aggro, it's really hard to deal with, especially because they're running reduced to Ash main board now as well. So if that Polaris has to come in active, which means you can't get it out in your main phase, and you have to waste the materialization to get it out because they have reduced to Ash, it's a whole nother turn you have to live before bringing it out, which is like impossible.
Yeah.
Not to mention, Clarent says remove a durability counter, choose target unit. That unit gets -2 damage, non-combat damage for the turn. So technically, these Clarent decks can just remove 3 counters and choose 3 units, and the Polaris won't kill anything.
Yeah, wow, I didn't even think about that utility. I haven't seen it in action yet. That is actually so true. The way it can negate is crazy.
So it means that like the Polaris was going to have to go off for what, 6 damage to kill him?
That's wild, actually. That is so wild.
Maybe 5 damage. But yeah, like, I would personally, if I was going to be playing these Lorraine decks or Clarent, I'd be bringing it out against Arisana, and I'll be popping the whole thing to survive that Polaris. Because if your units can survive that first Polaris, the only Polaris, I think you just win the game.
Yeah, she wouldn't have any other way to deal with it. You're right.
Yeah. So I'll put it in B, I think.
Cool. We talked about a lot about fire. Fire here, is it S tier? Like, I would say fire has always been a crowd favorite. People love just hitting face quick. It's when we were playing this deck, it's just like, okay, in this turn, what's the maximum damage I can do? What's my maximum damage I can do next turn? There's not like so much forethought. Am I holding for this? I'm just sending it and hopefully send it. So I think it's definitely more playable for players. Players are more likely to play it. I think there's a lot of situations like can be caught off guard, that people aren't expecting, or they have to use a lot of things to mitigate the different types of damage. Like, do they have to play more defensive, get a taunt up? Do they need to null lantern? Do they have the fast cures to maintain? Is it enough? There are, I think, a lot of like resolute stands maybe coming through.
Genbu, Burst Asunder, and Wind Allies have all knocked Water Allies out of the meta. So Water Allies have a lot of bad matchups, right? Water Allies it's horrible to play Water Allies into Genbu. They're literally just a better Water Allies, plus they have a big turtle, right? Dream Fairies, Wind Allies, Dream Fairies and stuff, really hard for Water Allies. Burst Asunder is a combo heavy deck, but they draw as many cards, like more cards than Water Allies, so they can control your situation a lot more. But because Water Allies is now out of the meta, like, you don't see any Water Allies.
No.
It gives Fire Allies so much more space to be in the meta. And these decks like Burst Asunder and these decks like Genbu and, Ari and stuff, their first 3 turns are very basic. It's very like for example, Burst Asunder deck, Fractals deck, they play 3 Fractals, they play a Zhangxiao. Maybe they'll play like a Gildas and a Frostborn, but these aggro fire decks are playing level 2 and they're playing Flame Sweep. Like, they will wipe the board, they will draw cards. It's not just like all in level 1 anymore. Into the Arisana, as I said, you reduce the Ash to the Polaris. Into the Wind Allies, you flame sweep the Wind Allies into the Genbu. They're running not playing explosives. What's it called? Immolation Trap in sideboard. So there's so many situations where the fire deck can just blow you up before you get to your win con. And that's what probably right now, puts them in S tier, especially because they're also running Clarent. So all these decks that are currently performing are running this Clarent, which is like destroying, I guess, the current meta champions that have been doing so well without Clarent. Because, Genbu was running Stratagem. Stratagem does nothing into Clarent, does 0 damage.
Yep.
Burst Asunder, the Fractal decks are running Burst Asunder and Stratagem, does nothing into Clarent. Not to mention that you want to refracting missile your opponent's allies, and you want to get that float, and you want to do all this stuff. Clarent stops the refracting missile from killing what you want to kill as well.
I mean, the way you're talking about Clarent right now is just like, this is the deck coming into the Nationals this weekend. Like, it just feels like it was only just released, and it is too I mean, it feels like too powerful, right? Like,
the fact that it's free, it's a free sword. So you banish
free by cost, right? Leave the banish the other sword.
You banish Drawn Blade and Clarent, the other Clarent, Way of Peace or whatever it's called. Clarent, I can't remember the name of it. Anyway, those two get banished. It comes in for free, and then whenever you remove your ability counter, it gets Spell Shroud, so you can't fracturize it ever.
Yep.
And it's not even a rest. It's not even a rest. Choose a unit. It blocks 2. It's not like you don't have to rest it. You can block 6 with this thing.
Yeah.
Like the fact that I think the problem, it's not a problem. I'm not gonna say it's a problem, but the thing is that it should have had rest Clarent block 2 on a unit. I think the fact that I played a game the other day against Fractals where they Shimmering Refraction me for 7. I removed a counter. In response, they refracting missile me for 8. I removed a counter. In response, they Shimmering Refraction me for 7. I removed a counter. Right.
Yep.
So I took 5. I took, I think, 2, and then I took 1. So they spent 3 cards to do a total of 8 damage to me, which it should have been like something close to 20 damage because it stacked up. It was like block 2. Now you're going to block 4 of this. Now you're going to block 6 of this.
Oh, because you're doing it in response. It was on the stack.
So it stacks up. So, and like that's really strong. And then like I versed the Jin at Sydney Regionals, and I was like, oh, wait a minute. Relentless Outburst deals 2 damage, right? This turns off Relentless Outburst.
Yeah.
Like, they can't do anything. Like, oh well, I guess you can't play that card anymore. So yeah, wow. I think Fire Lorraine is S tier. I think Fire Lorraine, there'll be a lot of Fire Lorraines in Nationals. I think that Genbu has a chance into Fire Lorraine if they can like see the right draws. But it just depends. The Fire Lorraines that are running level 2 with Flame Sweep have a lot more opportunity to perform, but they got less burst, where the level 1 Fire Lorraines have like just a burst, and if they can't get through with their burst, they lose. That's my situation with it.
So then maybe while we're flirting here with the Clarent card here, do we saying the difference between just like, I believe when I look at these decks for the Fire Lorraines, the Clarent's in the deck, but there are ones that are playing Ascension, I believe, and Krux Lorraine.
So I think the Clarent picture, like in your current tier list, we're gonna use that as the Krux version potentially. Correct. Because there is Krux Lorraines running around with Clarent as well.
That's the one you played, right?
I've been playing Fire.
Here we go. Did you start this or you someone else?
Nah,
you didn't want to claim it?
I think everyone's been on it. So there's Wind Krux and Fire Krux decks running around. The situation with it and the reason why it's so strong is that Lorraine level 3 Spirit Ruler lets you bring a sword back for free. And it gets 3 durability counters, right? So I'm just gonna get a bit technical for everyone here, so apologies. Sure. So the line is that obviously you get Clarent out for free. You banish Drawn Blade and Clarent, correct?
Mm-hmm.
And that's free. You've lost nothing for that.
Yep.
Okay? But then when you go to level 3, you get Drawn Blade back and you draw a card. Okay. So it's a +1 for no reason because you didn't pay for Drawn Blade to begin with. So you didn't pay 1. So you didn't draw 1. You didn't filter 1. But you're getting it back for free. So when you hit level 3 as Spirit Ruler, you're actually getting a GCR for free that turn.
Yep.
Because Drawn Blade's coming back, you never had to pay for it, and you draw a card. So the fact that you can potentially go Dungeon Guide to level 3, bring back Drawn Blade, draw a card, is making your Dungeon Guide cost 1, as in like you're only losing 1 card to level up to level 3.
Yep.
And the fact that you're only using 1 card to level up to level 3 is a +2 for your whole push. So that kind of line of banishing the Drawn Blade and coming to level 3 and getting it back to draw a card. I'm not even talking about that the thing blocks 2 and saves you from Vermilion Decrees, from Burst Asunders, from Stratagems, from Blazing Throws, from, that, like, I'm not even talking about that. I mean, I'm just talking about how it's literally a fucking GCR.
Yeah.
Like, that is insane.
Yeah, that's
to me.
wild. Yeah. It has so
So,
much built in with it. It's just like positive plus positive.
although if we're gonna put that actual deck on the tier list now, I would put it in the A tier for the sole reason that the Crux version, the current Crux version of the list, the Wind and Fire version, if you don't see your Crux cards, it is just a worse Fire Lorraine. So I would say that, like, yeah, it destroys fractals, like, it's not close. It's really bad into Genbu. Genbu has a lot of space when you play the Krux Lorraine to just, mill you out.
Mm.
And it's not good into the Luxem Xander. So it would be A tier for the sole reason that it probably beats most ally decks, and it definitely beats the Fire Lorraine and the Wind allies, because you are running obviously 3 to 4 sweeps main board, and you are going to 2 and 3 obviously as a focus. But those Genbus and those Luxem Xanders are really hard for the matchup. So I don't think it's like the Crux version is S tier and everyone should play it. I think it's an underdog. It should go in A tier, and if they have the right run and they get to like day 2 and top 4, top 8, where you're versing like fractal decks potentially and allies, you can win the whole thing. But you've got to dodge the right decks.
Yeah, cool. I think there's a big part of today's recording around this Clarent card, which hopefully either people have already been involved, but if you haven't and you're catching this, you might be like, oh damn. You know what I mean? But I'd be more than New Zealand people haven't already taken a flight over. But I think this is a really good. And this is only for Nats too, right? We've still got a whole long one with this season. This is
correct.
Gonna be, we're in mid-season right now. There's plenty of time.
There are some fractal players that have been saying that they don't have trouble with Clarent, and it's quite easy to deal with. And there probably is some good enough fractal players that can deal with it. For example, like if you attempt to fracturize the Clarent, the Lorraine opponent has to remove a durability counter to give it Spell Shroud, and the fractals player is getting a floating memory. So yeah, you waste like 2-3 fracturizers that you don't get to use elsewhere. But if you waste those durability counters, then it can get to a point where you can win that matchup. I played in the European regionals, and although I didn't play well as well, like I played pretty badly, I did lose to fractal players that kind of figured it out and were able to drop that Gildas, drop that Frostborn, just swing at me for like 6 with like allies. And then I just died while I was trying. Like I had this Clarent up, but Clarent doesn't do anything to 4 damage from Gildas and 3 damage from Frostborn. So like it is like I'm not going to sit here and say like watch out, Clarent's going to win the whole thing, because it's not. I think they've literally put it in to try and fix the Burst Asunder problem. That if they weren't to put it in, you would just have like top 8 Burst Asunder.
Yep, I agree. So let's then shuffle across to our Burst Asunder deck, our Water Fractal deck. It has been so powerful. There's no doubt about it. The idea that you can, the Fractal itself, being able to have, play stuff when they wake up, the reaction, not play from your hand. There's so many cards that do so well with that. The ability to say, I'm going to deal 2, but I'm not going to choose to use my Fractal. Do you have a response? If you have no response, then I'm going to send it with Burst Asunder. The control of water, I guess you're saying we're going to see a lot more. We might see we still got a lot of fire, Home by Fire coming out with the Fire Lorraines. I still think it sits up there maybe as an S tier deck, maybe an A, but
I would say it would be disrespectful to not put it at the top of this tier list for the amount of performance it's had already this season. Like, I think that it has to go at the top. It has to be the number 1 deck. Even though Clarent's out, like the fact that Clarent's out because of the deck probably proves its like its gradients and its performance, right? And like, look, they haven't said specifically they brought it out to stop Burst Asunder, but like it's pretty obvious in my opinion. So I think the Fractal deck still stays at the top and still stays in S tier. Although that Fire Lorraine matchup is quite rough for the Burst Asunder. So I think that we're either going to have Fractal players on the weekend that figure out how to deal with Fire Lorraine, and then we'll see them at the top, or there might be situations where these Fractal decks run into these random Clarent decks and get some losses on their belt and start to sink. So it's very exciting to see what happens here and to see if the meta will shift far enough that Fractals can't get to that top 8 just because there's so many people teching for it. Because like every Wind deck's running 4 Scatter Essence. Every Lorraine deck's got Clarent now. Everyone is kind of prepared for Fractals. And if Fractals still win Nats this weekend, then like bravo, the deck's too strong. Like that's how I feel.
Yeah, and so like the reason we picked these decks today that we're talking through is we've gone through Fractal Insight and kind of looked at data over the past few past month or so, looking at entrance of like 50 plus games, looking at the top 8 and seeing a common trend of what is placed in the top 8. And that's kind of what we're discussing today with these decks. So that's where we started, and I brought to Lime, and we talked through this today. So I guess like looking right now, we've really looked at Lorraine as really a big champion. Like we're talking right now, Lorraine is hot topic. And then Dao Chan. We've got Arisana, but Lorraine's doing really well. On the other side here, let's look at our assassins. So let's look at, there is of course the Shadow Strike deck. I think has been more, I see it more than I felt like it when it first came out was kind of playing. That would be my assumption. I feel like it's being played more recently. I feel there was a period, I guess, when it was out a lot. I'm trying to think of what it was played against when it came out, but I think it's more the Incapacitate is such a strong card at a low cost that people like having. I think that's what really makes the Assassin deck. It also, getting to level 3, we're seeing a lot of fire. Well, now I've got the Shadow Strike clones, which can deflect attacks. So if you can get a situation where you can get to 3, start putting that, it's very hard to get through and knocks those allies down, which you're seeing more with Lorraine and the fires, and then it's getting more opportunity in there. I don't really know much about the water matchup, the Fractal versus Shadow Strike. I mean, you have Shadow, you're going to have Scatter Essence. I would still say that Sunder probably does all right in that space, but again, that's for that in-cap. Maybe I put it as an A deck, just because I think it's good against allies, and if you can get up to building your clones and get to 3, they're going to have a hard time getting through to hit you and deal damage.
Yeah. So the situation is that Crystallized Destiny is a card that kind of has been moving into main board lately. A lot of people are running it main board. Crystallized Destiny is a 3-cost fast activation reaction, I believe, that it's just a spell sheet. It blocks all of the next incoming damage, that like the next attack. And if that attack was 7 or more damage, it makes your opponent pay 2 for every other card they play for the rest of the turn. So it's a full floodgate lockout. A lot of people are running it main board now, including the Krux deck I was playing was running 3 of the main board. So the Shadow Strike deck has to play around Crystallize, has to have an in-cap for Crystallize.
Yep.
Which is fine. Now the main problem though is, and as you were saying just then, if Tristan can get to level 3, it makes it hard for allies.
Yep.
But the thing is, though, they can't get to level 3 fast enough. So Tristan's weakness from the beginning has been aggro and has been allies, because they've got Sadie, they've got their black market brokers, and they've got their windmill engineers.
Yep.
But when your opponent has a red hair and Arthur on the board, and you don't see your Dream Fairies, or your Dream Fairy gets Vermilions, it's a very hard situation for Tristan to deal with the board. That she doesn't have a sweep. He has Ensnaring Fumes that lets you bounce all your aggro player cards back to his hand, so he can just play them again.
Yep.
So I think she's in an interesting spot that if there's allies and Philo there, she's not going to perform. If there's Fractals and like Genbu there, I think she will perform. So it just depends on, I guess, the matchups. But OC Nats, or OCE as a region in general, is very renowned for allied players and aggro players. So even last nationals and all of our regionals and all of our big events, most of the Kiwis have come with water allies, most of the and wind allies. A lot of Australians are wind ally, water ally, and Pfizer players. So that overall, I guess, if that meta is to follow through, and that, like, I guess, expectations to follow through, that those players are still playing the decks that they used to play, it does give Tristan a harder spot to perform. But at the same time, there's always 1 or 2 Tristans that make it into like a top 16 event. So just depends. There are some really strong American players coming, and I believe some are Tristan players. So obviously Tristan can skill gap other decks, but I think that it is a 50-50 in this matchup in these matchups overall, as in like they lose to Philo and Wind Allies. I think I want to put her either top of B or bottom of A is where I'll put her.
I mean, in A right now we have the Clarent Lorraine, Krux Lorraine, and Wind Allies. Do you think it performs equally with them or below them?
I think it loses to the Krux Lorraine and it loses to Wind Allies, because Krux Lorraine just loops Prismatic and then deletes the whole hand, and then Crystallized Destinies as well.
Well, then we think we drop it down to B tier then.
I think you can have an end pick for it, but I think it would be bottom of A or top of B is where I'd sit it currently.
Yeah, we fill it up at B.
Just because it's very getting to that level 3 and getting those clones out. It's great to get there, but if you need to Ensnaring Fumes a board still, you're losing those clones when you Ensnaring Fumes, and you normally have to Ensnaring Fumes to get rid of the turtle, get rid of the dragon, or get rid of like the Arthur red hairs, right? So then you're doomed pretty much.
Yep.
Not to mention, a lot of people are running Staggering Strike, even main board now. Like I think the Fire Lorraine's been running Staggering Strike main board, so has the Wind Ally players. And if you Staggering Strike a Tristan, if Tristan can't get 4 counters to go to level 2, she actually loses. I was playing Tristan the other day into Philo, and the opponent would just reduce to Ash my boots when I bring him out, and I would never get any counters. And no, it was the most miserable experience I've ever played. Like I just sat there with 2 counters. I couldn't get any more counters, and it was like Gildas, Red Hair, Surging Bolt, Blazing Throw. And it's like, I can't get. And then you're forced to go 2 with 2 counters. So you only draw 1 card, so you're down another card. Then you DG to 3. You go to 3 counters. You can't get Claw out. You can block 1 attack. It's actually miserable.
Tough. All right. Let's go to the second assassin, which is Xander. We've seen. I think Luxem is so interesting as a deck because I feel like it's like a dark horse. I feel like it's like people never really. I don't think there's been a season where like everybody, you know what I mean? People don't just like everybody's like on Luxem. I feel like there's like people just like I hate Luxem. People aren't always on Luxem, but it does well. It just does. It's like, hey guys, remember this deck called Luxem? The next minute it's winning. And you're like, what just happened? I thought why is it? Why? You know what I mean? It's like all these new cards come out and those guys are like, let's do Luxem. I think like. You know, this I don't know. So much just negate people using the vanish from sight, the resolutes. They just get to that point where they just start healing, and you're not really countering that healing. They can use the fast cures to heal. You're not really countering that. So like, there's aggro decks can be. Oh, I'm going to resolute this turn. I'm gonna vanish from this turn, and you just can't get through. And then you have these. Then you start to reveal your hand when you're level 3, and you're taking people putting cards down. You've got this Excalibur, which is such a wonderful card to delete anything. Is so powerful, and then it's also played Fire and Wind, which I think is like okay, like that's still it's not even decided on what spirit people want to play it on. People are still trying to flex with both for the different. I think one's maybe for the Scarlet Essence coming on the Wind side, Fire for the draw. If I look at these other decks, does it even go into S? Like I feel like a good Luxem player is also very difficult to play with, and I also think the games go very long. So in the situations of an hour gameplay, like you have to make a decision. If I don't win, like I was playing Fire at the regionals, and like one game I blitzed, second game it went for so long, and then third game we tied, and there was a point there I was like, do I just scoop? Like how close am I? He's so low, but I couldn't get that win. So I might put it into S tier. I think it's a very dark horse. If played well, and I feel like the only people, if you're someone right now watching this, you're like, oh, I'm going to pick up Luxem this weekend, you ain't going to do well. But if you've been sitting on Luxem for a very long time and you know your matchups, I think it's a good deck.
The Luxem's worst matchup is Fractals, right?
Yep.
So Bob won Southeast Asia Nationals into Fractals in the finals, but Bob high rolled like a god that best of 3, and he
the
like,
Glenny boy,
like he drew everything he could. So I think Fractals is a bad matchup for Xander. Now that's why they've all moved to Wind. All the good Luxem players that I know of have moved to Wind for the sole reason that they need to make that Fractal matchup better, especially if like we're looking at potentially 40 Fractal decks on the weekend. Like I'm not sure if people are going to get scared and move off Fractals, or if they're going to say, screw Clarent, let's play Fractals anyway.
Yep.
So that matchup is really hard for them. The matchup into Arisana is a flip. The matchup into Wind Allies is easy. The matchup into Philo is a flip too. So it's good, but Clarent also stops Lightweaver's assault. Not to bring up Clarent again, but
let's go back 20 minutes ago. We talked about Clarent. Yeah, go on.
If they double Lightweavers you for 16 and you pop your Clarent like all 3 counters, they're doing, instead of 16 damage, they're doing 4 damage. Yeah. Now, don't get me wrong. They'll be able to reveal every turn, deal 2, deal 2, deal 2, deal 2. But I think it is a bit annoying, especially because they can't Excalibur Clarent, because Clarent gives itself Spell Shroud when you remove durability counter.
Yep.
So Clarent is annoying, but I think that Luxem is still in a good spot in the meta as Wind Xander, because I guess the thing about Wind Luxem Xander is that it has more opportunity to just slice and dice you. And the fact that Slice and Dice is a card that does 15 damage with Ripper, which is absolutely broken, by the way.
Yep.
is it makes a big difference where you can run into that fire Lorraine that goes all in, you fast QR to live, just live or whatever,
Yeah.
and then you slice and dice them for their whole health pool and you just win early, like an
Yep.
aggro deck. So that situation there, and the reason that I guess it's in such a good spot is because it can do that. The light weavers and all the Luxem sites and stuff's good to stabilize with, but sometimes you can just play it like an aggro deck. Drop your Sadie, drop your Black Market Broker, drop. I think that the Wind Xanders are running a lot of allies that they can kind of play that low to ground if they need to, and then they go up to 3 if they need to. So the flexibility of the deck is really strong. It's a toolbox deck. It's very, very hard to play. Most people can't play it, but the people you're going to see on this deck on the weekend are going to be top 1 percentile players in the world, and they're going to do well. So I guess
agree.
deck-wise, I'll say A tier, but players that we're playing would be S tier. So let's put it at the bottom of S tier.
Genbu. These last two decks I really don't know much about. I have not seen them played. I haven't versed them, not seen them played. I've seen people talk about them, but I haven't really seen them in practice. So these are going to give you a lot to talk about. Genbu the Turtle. You talk about number water allies, but I think this is a water allies deck, right? You're trying to get Genbu out, and then you're going to flip his health pool. He's going to swing hard.
So when thinking about Genbu, you got to think of Watermill Arisana. Do you remember Watermill Arisana from Santa Clara Nationals? I believe it won it.
Yeah, with Polaris and you.
Yeah, Polaris. They have Fractal Apollo Depths.
Yep.
They would banish Fractal Apollo Depths, and that'd mill you out, right?
Yep.
So Genbu is that deck. It's just obviously merged into Guaja for the sole reason that Watermill Arisana had the Fractal Apollo Depths mill.
Yep.
And then it had obviously it had allies that push damage as well.
Yep.
And then it had the what was the other option it had? I think there was the 2 options. It pretty much had obviously push. Oh, I had stratagem as well. So I had stratagem as well. So there was the 3 options of winning the game, right?
Yep.
So Genbu has Fractal Apollo Depths. It has allies to push damage. It has stratagem, and then it has a turtle that can swing for 30.
Yeah,
so
wow.
It's the same deck, but you have an extra win con, and that turtle is very easy to get out. You're milling so many cards anyway, and half the time it is swinging for 20 to 30 because they do they flip
card,
turtle,
right?
pre-rec, they pay 3, and then the turtle's effect says for each water card that you have in your graveyard, it gets
health.
a life.
Yep.
So they'll have maybe 15 in the graveyard, so it now has 24 life.
Yep.
Then they'll recollect and draw, and they'll swing, response to free swing, they'll resonating Fuge, which swaps the health and damage, and they'll swing for 24. And then if you have a reaction, they'll just title lock it. Null Lantern obviously turns the deck off, and it makes the deck struggle. They're running 3 Unbroken Mustangs main board, so they know that's their problem. They know they can't deal with Null, that's a problem for their deck. So they're running 3 Mustangs main board.
Yes, the Mustang, baby.
But it's not even that. I guess it's the situation that it is a mill deck, and they have a lot of float. That Lost in Thought, they're Lost in Thoughting anywhere from 4 to 8 cards. So they mill all this float, and they're not running stratagem, or they are running stratagem, but I have a Clarent out, for example, or most people have Clarents out or safeguards out, right? So they're not even going for that stratagem anymore. They're just playing that control game. They'll do that huge Lost in Thought, and they'll draw 5-6 cards, and all of a sudden you're looking at a water deck that's sitting on 14 cards. And it's you feel kind of helpless at that point where it's okay, there's a 3/9 taunt out. He's milling every 2-3 every turn. He's got a Fractal Apollo Depths out that I can try and scatter, but he's probably got 14 answers. And then it becomes inevitable that you're just going to get hit for 30 with this turtle. So is it good? It's a good deck. It's an underdog deck. Is it going to be A or S tier? No. I think it will probably be the top of B tier. It does struggle into Fractals. Fractals just burst asunder it early. Plus, Fractals runs a lot of float as well. Tristan does really well into it. Arisana does really well into it. So in regards to meta, I guess it's not really the greatest pick in the meta. It does beat the allies. It does beat the Philo. It does beat the prismatic Krux that I was playing, and the wind one, I believe, just because you can't get through that 3/9 turtle normally unless you're going to hit it with your prismatic edge. I'm going to put it at the top of B, I think.
I mean, you're saying it beats, Dream Fairy and, Krux Lorraine. Doesn't that mean make it sound like Muppets sitting A tier next to them if it's beating them? Like you're saying, the only
No,
thing real big
because
is it
I
like
guess
a
the way you got to
fractal.
think of it is like there's going to be a lot of fractal decks, and there's going to be a lot of like, I guess there won't be a lot of Tristans, but there'll be a lot of fractal decks. There'll be Tristans, there'll be Aries. It probably loses to Lux and Xander too. So the decks it's beating, like sure, it's beating those decks that are in the A tier, but the spread is not as high as it should be. The spread's quite low.
Yep.
Like if it had a wider spread, I feel like the more things you can beat, the more higher you'll be, right? Like that's why Fractals is at top, because it beats most things. Where I feel like Genbu, even like a really good Genbu player can still lose to half of these decks that we're looking at.
Yep. All right. And the
Um,
last deck to look at is our dragon, the Seiru, which you spoke to me at the end of this before we started, and I was like, "What? I've never seen this drawn." So let's talk about the dragon.
so Turbo Dragon is a deck that has been around for the last 2-3 weeks. It is the definition of Diana, in my opinion, because
Really?
it's running 4 Dungeon Guide, 4
Yep.
Beseech Fate Stones, and 4 Beseech the Wind. So it's got 12 level up functions.
What?
It's not. It's normally level 3 turn 2 or level 3 turn 3.
Yep.
So it's the quickest leveling you can possibly get. So the whole deck revolves around you leveling to 3 as fast as possible.
Yep.
Sometimes you can sit at 2 and draw a card, but normally, like the good Turbo Dragon players I've seen have gone straight to 3. And the whole game plan obviously is to get that dragon out turn 2, turn 3, and starting to build your arcane influence and your arcane blast in graveyard, in banishment. Sorry. So the deck is very wombo combo-y. It can high roll, so it can beat nearly anything if it can high roll well enough.
Yep.
There's a card called CU's Command, which lets you, like, the on attack triggers proc 3 times. So you can just send an arcane blast like turn 3 if you can get the right hand.
Wow.
But obviously the downfall of it is that like it's really bad into disruption. So if it can be disrupted, it struggles. But luckily for us, a lot of these decks like Burst Asunder, although they have Frostbinds, like they're using their whole hand to put fractals down. They need to build their fractal board,
Yeah.
so they're not holding that early disruption. So you know most decks don't want to sit turn 1 and 2 and hold up interaction. They want to build their own stuff, right?
Yep.
So Turbo Dragon has been actually doing quite well. It's not everywhere, but there's multiple events where it's won or top 8'd in a big event. And I think that it is probably the true underdog story, because this deck, if high rolled well enough, can win the whole event.
Are you playing it? Is it like very similar, like Arcane Rai? Is that what you're talking about? Like just like getting to
It's
3,
faster than
5?
Arcane Rai. Yeah, it's even
Right.
faster than Arcane Rai though, because it's got 12 level up cards.
Yeah. Wow. But that's the same
So
for
like
sending it.
so at all times it's beseeching turn 1 to go to level 1.
Yep.
And then it gets the Azurite Stone, where you banish a card, draw a card that turn, so you get 1 counter.
Yep.
Then turn 2, it's dungeon guiding to level 2.
Yep.
No, it's going to level 2.
Yep.
Level 2 lets you, so you banish 2, so you go to 3 counters, and
Yep.
then level 2 lets you draw a card or get 2 counters. You get 2 counters, so you've now got yourself at 5 counters, right?
Yep.
And then you dungeon guide that turn, and that lets you get 2 more counters to 7.
Yep.
And then level 3 Guaja says put 3 counters on, so you got 10 counters. So Dragon's out.
Yep.
And then once Dragon's out, you swing for 4. It's a 4/12 taunt.
Yep.
And every time you attack with it, you can choose to empower or give it an arcane blast. But if you're doing this from turn 3, it's just like you can kill those allies you need to kill, start building those arcane blasts.
Yeah.
You've got Harness Lightning, which gives you +4 damage for the turn, so it's swing for 8. And they're running Byaku's command as well. So Byaku's command lets you wake it up and give it a buff counter. So they're running that. They're running Byaku's command. They're running CU's command. They're running Harness Lightning. They're running Brisk Wind Trotters Mystery. So giving it 2 buff counters. So it becomes a 6/14, right?
Yep.
And then if you try a Dream Fairy, the level 2 Guaja release cancels the activation. You can stop a Dream Fairy. So you can't Dream Fairy it. You need 2 Dream Fairies.
Yep. Wow.
And then on top of that, they've got their Veiling Breezes and they've got their defensive. So it is a very scary deck. It's one to look out for fun. It's a fun deck to watch, 100%.
What do you think? It's like it's struggle, like
water, probably water. A deck that can kind of hold up some negates. If it gets negated on the right times, it's kind of rough.
Yeah.
I think that water's a bit of a struggle. Probably, I'd say Fractal's probably a flip. Philo, it's very good into Philo because it's just got 25 life turn 3. So like the Fire Lorraine kind of is not doing 25 as fast as you're leveling up.
Yep.
It destroys Luxem Xander just because, as all Arcane does, like dealing 11 damage to a Xander, especially multiple times, is like kind of hard to heal out of.
Yep.
And then Ari, I think it's probably unfavored into Ari. I think Ari beats it just because Ari has those astral seals, has those those cosmic bolts. I did hear there was a match Turbo Dragon into Ari at Melbourne Regionals where the Ari player like got I think 8 counters on the Polaris and just killed the dragon with Polaris plus a swing. It's kind of funny.
Just gathering like crazy. Love it.
Yeah. So look, I think that it's an underdog. I wouldn't put it in S tier. I probably wouldn't put it in A tier. I'd probably put it maybe in B tier, maybe in the middle somewhere.
Okay.
Yeah, I think that would be fair.
Right. Well, that's been our tier list. This has been Limelight Mystery. I mean, Lime, we're at the top. We've got our Fire Lorraine, versus Xander, Xiao Chan, and our Luxem. That's the right kind of. Luxem may drop down in the bottom 8, but I like yes. I think there are 3 decks I'm going to expect coming out in the future of this season. Within underneath, Wind Allies and our Krux Lorraine, and then our V tiers are Cosmic, Dragon, Shadow Strike, and Genbu. I guess any of these you would shift down to C tier, or you would move up or down.
I think drop Genbu to C tier.
Yep.
Maybe drop Luxem to the top of A.
Yep.
What do you think about that so far? I think maybe just to spread it out a little bit.
I mean, you're looking. I just think, Fire and Water's what you use. I'm hoping for quick games. I'm excited to cast quick games.
Yeah,
so I'm like,
I think there'll be a lot of Fire Lorraine. There'll be a lot of Fire Lorraine.
I mean, like we did the horses at Last Ascent. We were casting the dragon. I'm gonna be looking for that deck day 1, day 2, and looking for a Turbo Dragon game to commentate because that's gonna be hell of fun. I feel like, the people you were talking about with the sword.
I think you drop the Krux to B as well. Actually, top of B.
Yep, I think that sword. I don't know if the Krux deck is it, but that sword is so powerful, and we're seeing it more used in the Fire deck. I mean, that interaction and people mastering around that interaction will be what you'll look for in these recent regionals and things. Look at if you're playing at home when you're going to play these decks. This is what I would send. I mean, for me too, if you're looking at these decks to recommend players to play, people watching our channel, like I'd be going either playing Burst or Fire anyway. Like, I mean, I don't know. Long run, maybe like play Luxem. If you master Luxem, you're probably in a good spot in a lot of seasons, right? Fire is good right now. It's very easy in my mind. I find it's a very easy deck to learn compared to Luxem. All right, like that is also if you're going to pick up for a season, that's a deck you should pick up and sending, right? And just mastering.
I guess like the advice I have been giving to a lot of players, and a fair few new players have started our locals. I just say to them, just wait for DTR. DTR is a brand new set. It's based on Alice in Wonderland. It comes out in July, I believe. Don't quote me. But like, I don't know anymore. It's like it's all a blur for me. Umbra Guardian and Astra Ranger. So these two situations are going to be these are going to be very strong combos when I think about it. Like I'll pin it chat, but I think that the Astra Ranger will have a bow that says whenever you glimpse an arrow, load it into this bow. Like, mark my words. If that comes out as correct, then you can come back and be like, Limelight, you must have the inside knowledge. But like, if that's like a thing that's going to be happening where you can glimpse arrows and shoot arrows, like how fun will that be? Let alone like I think the Fire. People quoting the Fire Umbra Guardian might be like graveyard, like the first graveyard deck, like Magic the Gathering, where you can like summon multiple things out of the graveyard. So imagine Crave shocking like skeletons into the graveyard and being able to summon them from there. So if these are like things that are going to happen and these are like the decks that are kind of coming out, I'd say just don't buy any of these cards. Just wait for the new set. The new set, obviously, they're not going to make. Look, let's be real. Jin and Kong Ming in A and B were horrible champions. They haven't performed.
Yeah.
I'm quite hopeful that Weebs probably saw that and went, okay, these champions sucked and they didn't do anything. How about we make the DTR champions pack a little bit more of a punch? And I hope that happens. And if so, then DTR is probably the perfect thing to kind of invest on.
I want to, we're going to we'll start arguing for a bit at the end of this, but when you say like Jin didn't perform, it's because he based on items that are so counterable and weapons, and then you go, we're going to build a ranger who's going to bring out a weapon. And I'm like, okay, bring out a weapon, dude. I have 8 other commons to the weapon. Like, unless it has Spell Shroud or
we
like.
just got a Clarent that has Spell Shroud.
Yeah,
correct?
so unless they're going to keep doing that, like weapon class, that's the reason we can't buy Diana, man. You know, like gun shield isn't it. You know what I mean? It costs too much.
If her deck revolves around a bow, which it probably should, then she either needs a level 2 or level 1 release that gives it Spell Shroud for a turn.
Yep.
Or it needs to have a Spell Shroud innately. And if they do that, then me as a Diana main will be pissed because Diana should have had that. And if Diana had that, imagine if Diana had that. Oh my goodness, dude.
It would at least be played. I don't know if it would be dominant. Like, this is what I mean. It just because of that issue at the moment is why Jin isn't played and why Diana isn't played, right? These two things are why these weapon classes people enjoy, but we're just not getting to see it. Yeah. So we're just not seeing it. So, like, is it bad? Like, when you're talking about, like, variety of decks here, like, we've looked at 8 decks right now. If we added 2 more, is it going to be such a dominated deck? If we say, hey, weapons, there's one extra weapon like Clarent. Like, if we're saying Clarent's coming in, but you only put it at B tier. Like, you know what I mean? And this card already has a Spell Shroud, and it's a weapon. If that was on a pole arm, is that going to make Jin unstoppable? You know what I mean?
Apparently the thin line, the Jin walks a very fine line. And if they were to give him options to keep his breastplate alive, apparently he would be tier 0. But I would love to see it to believe it. I don't think that's true.
Yeah, exactly right. Just let it open. Just let it open for a week and see what happens, you know? Let it out for a couple of weeks. Well, like, at least let us play the deck, you know?
For April Fools.
Yeah, exactly. Just send it, man. Like, anyway, Creative Shock. I've been Mr. Ree. You'll hopefully see me at Nats. I will be there in New Zealand. You won't see Lime. He's going to be a father. He still will be making videos and coaching the Creative Shock scene. Of course, we're down under Aussie lads. Thank you for watching. Please like, subscribe. If you've got anything you want to argue, please. Lime's got plenty of time on him to argue. He's going to need to be distracted. He's going to be up all night with the kids. So if you want to argue with him, let him up. And yeah, I appreciate you guys being here. Thanks for watching.
Cheers.